to Watch is an intimate look into the lives of prominent and influential women leaders from around the world and the challenges they faced on their journey. It's the real story behind her title. Join us every week to hear more stories about women from around the world and in your own communities at womentowatch.net. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Women to Watch. I'm Sue Rocco. Thanks so much for being with me. Joining me in just a moment will be Liza Donnelly, and Liza is an award-winning cartoonist for The New Yorker. She is an author, and she's also working currently on a documentary called Women Laughing. For over 30 years, Liza has been commentating through her cartoons about culture, society, politics, entertainment. So it's going to be an exciting conversation. As always, stay with us during the breaks where you'll hear from our watch team of corporate partners, bringing you information from their industries. And we always want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube page where you can watch the show at W2W Media. So now I'm very honored and excited to welcome to the show Liza Donnelly. Liza, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Susan. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. And I understand you're joining us from New York. How is it there today? I'm assuming hot.
It's very hot. I have the AC on, and the AC is not really, it's not keeping up very well, but that's all right.
Oh no. Well, before you know it, it'll crack and we'll be complaining about the cold in the fall. Yeah.
Exactly.
Listen, it's so interesting, your life story, when I look at it, because it seems to me that your beginning is so very tied directly to the work that you're doing today. And I'm going to start off with a quote that you said, "My mother knew what I needed when I was young, and so she bought me a book of cartoons." What was she seeing? What do you think prompted her to know that that's exactly what you needed?
Well, I was already drawing, so she was encouraging the drawing part. I think we loved humor in our family, and so I think she may have recognized that I liked humor, and gave me the paper and the pen, the pencil, and the book of cartoons, and encouraged me to draw even more.
Yeah. That was really insightful of her, because I know, you shared with me, we had an intro call, and when you were young, there was some chaos going on in the house and things weren't always as calm as most kids would like. First, I wondered, can you describe that for me? What were you sensing as a child? And then did that particular hobby that you began then help you deal with that stress?
Great question. Well, I just said that our family loved humor, and that's true. And my parents got the New Yorker, so that was the bottom line. But we did have some trouble in my family. My sister was always getting into trouble, and so I think I sensed that humor would make people feel better. If I could get my mother or my father or both to smile, then I was doing my job. Because of my sister, she was older, her behavior was pretty bad. So my role, many families are like this. My role was to be the good girl and to be quiet and in my case draw. And so I would make these little drawings for my parents, hoping to make them have a moment of smiling or happiness. So that was my role, I thought.
Well, I think you're absolutely right about humor. It definitely, in the scariest of times, right? If people can make us laugh, you have that moment of relief.
Yeah. And I guess I'm
right?
still doing that, right? I'm still doing that.
You're still doing that. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Tell me, when did you realize, or decide that would be a career path for you?
Mm-hmm. I was always drawing, as I said, and I went to college. I went to a liberal arts college, Earlham College, out in Indiana, to study art, but also to study biology. And I didn't think I could make a living at cartooning, but I just kept doing it. It wasn't when I got to New York after college. I got a job at a museum, and just kept drawing. And I sold to the New Yorker 2 years after college. And I think at that point, I thought, well, maybe I can do this. It wasn't really till then. Because I feel like even though, it's not like I was making a lot of money with that first sale at the New Yorker, and I didn't quit my job right away. Um, the New Yorker, what I had learned from meeting other cartoonists is that they brought you in slowly. It was almost like an internship. If they bought one from you, it was a big deal. It meant that they had some confidence in you. So that's when I decided to just try to quit my day job and go straight
Yeah.
to cartooning. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember what that first cartoon was that the New Yorker bought?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. What can
Well,
you describe it?
well, it's not very funny, and but at the time I didn't care. It was I had just come out of college studying art, so I did a drawing of Paul Cézanne's three elements. Paul Cézanne said that there were three elements of nature that all artists had to draw in order to draw anything. There's the cone, the sphere, and the cylinder. So I did a drawing of a cone, a sphere, and a cylinder, and then a TV set, and that was the joke. So it was a twist on that's what cartoons often are, is they're a twist on a given idea or given scenario, and the twist that makes you laugh. But that's not the first
Yeah.
one they ran. They sold I bought another they bought another one, and it was about a man petting a dog, and that's the first one they ran. So
So I'm so curious. What's the process of that? Getting a cartoon, in front of the New Yorker and having them buy it, and then bring you on staff. What is the Because you were young. If it was two
yeah,
years out of school,
right. I was the youngest at the time, youngest cartoonist, and one of four women doing it
one of four women. Okay.
at the time. Um, Well, the routine is pretty much still the same. It's always been like this, is that if you want to sell to the New Yorker, you send in sketches. If you're unknown to them, it has to be more finished work, uh, cartoons every week, and try to do 6 to 10 because they want to see consistency. They want to see that you're not just one person with one good idea. So, or also they want to. This is back then. They wanted to see if you had a voice at best. If you had a way of seeing the world, or your humor had a certain tone to it, or something like that, which would be ideal if you had that. Not all cartoonists have that, but have that, or they're more of a workaday cartoonist. So you send in every week, and they either buy one or they don't. So nobody's telling us what to draw. You're doing what you think is funny, what you think is interesting or topical, and if they buy it, they do. If they don't, you just try it again next week.
Yeah. It's just impressive to me that at such a young age you would have that unique perspective on culture and politics and even later, entertainment, just really the world. You're observing, and then you're seeing the humor in something that a lot of people look at and they can't see that. I just think that's such a gift.
Oh, well,
Um,
I mean, I was drawing since I was real little, and also I was really shy, so I spent a lot of time looking at people and things. I think observing the world. I
Observing.
was really
Yeah.
quiet and shy, so maybe that's
Yeah.
it. I don't know, but I mean, I didn't get
Well,
my voice right away. It took me a while. I mean, I had some kind of voice. I had a drawing style and a little bit of a voice. Otherwise, they may not have bought that first one. But it does
yeah.
take a while. It takes years to really fully find your, your voice.
So that's I wanted to talk about your TED Talk.
Mhm.
You did a TED Talk and it was viewed over 1.5 million times.
I know.
So I have two questions. What do you think it was about that talk? Because it was, if I recall, it was about 6 minutes.
Mhm. Yep.
What was it that connected with both men and women, do you think? It was really excuse me, the topic was women, and someone shy who draws decided to get up in front of, I don't know how many people were in that audience, a lot, and speak like that. Yeah, where did that where did that courage come from?
It's hard to give a quick answer to that. I think it's tied into having studied women cartoonists and writing that book, Funny Ladies, which I assume we'll talk about soon, and knowing that I had an experience as a young woman that might resonate with other women. Being quiet and shy and trying to find your voice, and running up against difficulties, and then finally figuring out a way to express that one's ideas or one's need to talk to the world. So when I first began public speaking, it was terrifying, but I was talking about other women cartoonists, so that helped me sharing. I have these great women I've discovered at the New Yorker. I didn't personally discover them, but they were unsung yet. So I used those women to talk about their lives and what they went through and how they struggled and how they found their creativity, and that helped me become a speaker, and I still do that. So a TED Talk was terrifying, but I did it, and it seemed to resonate. I think what I said resonates with not just women too. I think it's just sort of a universal struggle as a young person to find who you are and make a life worthwhile. So.
Yeah. And very much about finding a voice. Something you developed later on in your career, which I find so fascinating, are the live drawings. And so you're invited to come to these major events like the Oscars or political debates, and observe and draw. Where did the spark for that come from? The idea to do that, and again, people are not looking at what you and I are talking about. These drawings that are quite simple in scale, but say so much, which again I think is a gift not a lot of people have. So first, tell me, where did that idea come from, and who did you present it to first to do it?
It began around 2015. I was given an iPad, and I was on Twitter already, and I was playing around with the iPad, and I was watching the State of the Union address, and I started just sketching what I was seeing on the TV. And with this particular app I use, I could send the drawing out immediately. And these are bold, quick drawings of, the president and the speaker and the people. It was just really quick reactions, and put it out on Twitter immediately. And because it was so different at the time, it was these bold drawings, quickly done in real time and shared on Twitter with maybe a little comment. It took off. People seemed to really enjoy it and comment on it. And so I did it for myself for a year or two, and then started to do it for organizations. And I got to the Oscars through a friend who introduced me to a friend. So, and then I worked for CBS News for 3.5 years, drawing for them. Also the Oscars and the Emmys and the Grammys and the White House press conference and the DNC and the RNC. No, I didn't go to the RNC. I couldn't get in for some reason. But it's it's a visual commentary on what's going on. So people feel like they're there with me because I'm drawing not just the speakers, not just the famous people. I try to capture them as best I can, but also the people behind the scenes, people that are painting the Oscar statue or vacuuming the carpet or making the food or taking out the garbage. So it's a whole kind of experience of what I see going on.
Yeah.
I love it.
Do you love doing it? And I mean, is that something you will continue to do for as long as
people
an opportunity
to do it? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you not get? I'm picturing you at the Oscars, and you're there to do a task. How do you not get distracted by all that's going on? In other words, you must have to go into a zone to really focus on the things that are going to tell a story.
I do. I sort of go into a zone. So I don't get to go in the theater. They don't let press in the actual theater, but I'm on the red carpet, and I will focus on somebody that I want to draw, and I just focus on the drawing and the thing I'm drawing. Listening the whole time. I'm listening to what's going on around me. So if I need to pivot and draw somebody else over there, I would do that. But I find it's really nerve wracking. It's very fast paced, particularly on the red carpet.
Yeah, people are moving.
They are.
So you're,
No, I mean, I got Meryl Streep once, and I didn't get her face. She was walking past me,
oh my gosh.
really fast, and I just had enough wherewithal to register the color of her dress and the shape of her dress, and that's what I drew. I just drew this quick drawing like past. So
Yeah,
and then you put her name in the corner, and everybody knows who it is.
right.
So,
So you mentioned the book, Funny Ladies, excuse me, and it was stories about other female cartoonists. And what was your goal in capturing those stories? What were you hoping people would walk away from after reading it?
so there's two editions. The first one, Funny Ladies, was done in 2005. Gosh, I'm sorry, I should know the dates. uh, yeah, 2005. And then the second one just came out to 2022. And so, I always knew that I was in the minority as a woman in this business, but I didn't really care when I started out. I just wanted to be a cartoonist. I didn't really think about gender much. We didn't, the culture didn't talk about it as much as we do now. Even though I was a feminist, I just wanted to be a cartoonist. So, but it wasn't until maybe around 2000 that I began to think, well, why aren't there more women? What's going on here? So I started doing more research. I went to the archives, the New Yorker archives, to see who the women were. And I knew of a few of the well-known names like Helen Hokinson and Mary Petty, but I didn't know much beyond that. So I spent a year studying that in the New York Public Library archives, and found more women that had started in 1925 at the New Yorker, which was amazing. There was a woman in the first issue, and then what I discovered was they began to disappear in the 50s, 60s. There were virtually no women cartoonists at the New Yorker, and it follows our cultural history, because in the 20s there were we got the vote in 1920. Women got the vote, and there was a feeling in some urban areas, a feeling of freedom, a feeling of liberation, like we can do anything we want. I think in certain demographics, not everybody, and I think that's what fostered a spirit of inclusion in the 20s in New York City. The New Yorker was always welcoming of women for the most part, and they just wanted good cartoonists, and they found some, because there were a lot of artists in New York City at that time, comic artists, regular artists. So, and then in the 50s, of course, after the war and after the Depression, women, the culture was putting more pressure on women to conform to a certain standard, a certain behavior, and I think women left cartooning and did not return until the 70s, which is when they started.
Oh, wow.
So
For 20 years. Wow.
well, I mean, there were one or two that was a woman doing cartoons during the war about wax, which is interesting. She was Roberta McDonald, and one woman that sold a few in the 50s, but basically they were not there in the 60s until mid 70s, and it was a change in the cultural feeling or attitudes towards women. There was a feeling of freedom, which I benefited from. I was never a hippie, but I followed the hippie wave, that women could do things. I followed the second wave of feminism, and felt that I could do anything. And then New Yorker hired a new cartoon editor in 1973, Lee Lorenz, a man who had a openness to looking at different ways to express humor. So when you do that, you get more diversity, whether it's more gender diversity or now diversity in other ways. So so just to finish that little story, in 2017, I discovered that there were, through the help of my husband, who studies the art of cartooning as well, there were more women cartoonists in one issue in 2017 than men, and that was a first. So I decided to celebrate that. I curated an exhibit about women cartoonists for the Society of Illustrators in New York City, and then I began to think I need to do a new edition of the book, because now it's equal for women.
Okay. I was going to ask, what are the statistics today? So it's equal.
It's pretty equal, yeah. I don't really know
Yeah.
the numbers, but it's equal gender-wise, and we have a non-binary cartoonist. We have a transgender cartoonist, and at least one that I know of, and we have more diversity in race and ethnicity. So they really, I think the New Yorker really, I think in the 2000s they were trying to increase diversity, but I think it wasn't until they brought in a new cartoon editor in 2017, Emma Allen, a woman, that they really started to try to redress that balance and make it more.
Yeah, that's awesome. Listen, we're going to go into our first break, and when we come back, I want to talk about this new film and documentary that you're working on.
Thank you. Great.
Women Laughing. Stay with us for our watch team of on-air contributors, and we'll be back with Liza Donnelly.
Hi, I'm Christy McCaffrey, founder and owner of Be the Good Media, and I'm here to share with you some good news. I wanted to share with you today a story about a woman named Tiffany Job. At just 37 years old, as a wife, mom, and nurse, Tiffany was blindsided with a diagnosis of advanced non-small cell lung cancer. Statistically, the prognosis is grim, but thankfully, Tiffany has responded rather well to the molecular targeted therapy she's been receiving. Not long after her diagnosis, Tiffany said that she told her husband, Nick, that she refused to leave this earth without making a positive impact. So her and her husband then set out to create a nonprofit called 10 for 10 Million. And their goal is really to encourage reoccurring donations of $10 per month in honor of the 10 million people who die annually from cancer. All of the funds collected go directly towards research. I have just found that Tiffany's attitude towards her own situation, but also towards life in general, is just so positive. I had her on the podcast, on Be the Good podcast, and I had this conversation with her, and I just left the conversation buzzing. I couldn't believe how this woman has overcome so much and yet still has the energy and the passion to do more for others. You can hear more of our conversation at BeTheGoodMedia.com, and there you'll also learn how Be the Good Media helps to amplify impact-driven missions and causes. Again, I'm Christy McCaffrey. Listen here for more good news on Women to Watch.
Hi, I'm Dawn Zier, CEO, Board Director, and Executive Mentor to Fortune 500 executives through my work at the Exco Group, a firm of experienced CEOs, board directors, and global business leaders who offer real-world experience to help organizations and senior executives grow. Today on Leadership Watch, we're going to talk about the importance of being purposefully intentional. A career is not a straight line, but each stop along the way should be well thought out and provide a path for future opportunities. Here are 4 ways to be intentional about your career. 1, tell your story. Create your elevator speech, practice it, and be ready to share it. It's much more memorable and effective than just listing off your accomplishments one by one. 2, develop your personal brand and know what you stand for. Jeff Bezos once said, "Your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room." Your personal brand encompasses your core values, how you show up, the way you treat others, your online presence, and the list goes on and on. Think about what you want to be known for, be intentional in how you present yourself, and figure out what makes you unique. 3, be intentional with your career moves. A career is not always about moving up. A lot can be learned from lateral moves, but have a clear reason and objective for each move you make. And finally, be direct with your communication. Know your desired outcome when having those important conversations and be deliberate with your messaging. Be intentional around the position you're taking, communicate the why, seek buy-in, and remember that how you get things done really does matter. Please follow me on LinkedIn at Dawn Zier. Also, if you're a senior executive looking to grow in your career, visit excoleadership.com.
Welcome back to the show. I'm joined this week by Liza Donnelly, and Liza is an award-winning cartoonist for The New Yorker. She is also an author and a current documentary filmmaker for a film debuting in 2025 called Women Laughing. So I'd love to hear about the film and how people can help.
Thank you, Susan. So it became clear to me, people were speaking to me before the pandemic, that my book, which came out in 2022, it should be a documentary. And I thought, yeah, but how? So I spent the last 5 years learning about documentary filmmaking during the pandemic. I took classes with Sundance, and I talked to every filmmaker that would speak to me. And it turns out documentary filmmakers are really friendly people, very generous with their time. And we put together a great team of filmmakers who have much more experience, which is easy to say, than I do in this field. And we are going to start filming this summer. So it's going to have some history of the women, but it's also going to be focused on creativity and women's creativity and how they talk about their lives in their work, which is a thread that I can carry through to the past as well. In that, when you look at the cartoons in the 20s, you get a peek into the world that these women were living in. They were living, many of them they were in New York. At least one I could think of, Barbara Sherman. I think she was probably a flapper because she drew a lot of flappers, what it was like to be a woman going out and staying out all night, all to all hours of the night, drinking and smoking and pushing those boundaries that women were doing in the 20s, and thinking for themselves and trying to become their own person in the 20s. And so I think there weren't many of them. There were maybe 8 or so, or 10 of those women. And then they came back in the 70s. And now there are many more doing this great, funny work for the New Yorker and other places too. But I want to hear about women's lives through their work. I want to know what they're experiencing, because now we're hearing so much more in those cartoons about their personal journeys and how hard it is for women to try to get at their voice when the culture is constantly bombarding us with what we're supposed to be, who we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to think. Are we supposed to be, a career woman or a mother, or am I supposed to wear this or wear that? And so that stuff, even though it's society and our culture is more accepting of women being whatever they want to be, because of Hollywood and advertising, there's still a lot of pressure on women to conform in certain ways.
Yes.
So finding your voice is still not easy, and I want to hear from these women. So we're going to spend time with contemporary women, talking to them and drawing with them. That's the plan. I really want to sit down and these women, I know them, that many of them are good friends, and talk with them and draw with them and find out how they come up with their ideas and what they find funny. And that's what we're going to do. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I think it sounds great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something as soon as you told me about it, I thought that's something I would love to watch.
Good.
It made me think, how would you compare cartoonists to women comics? So women
That's
comics, obviously.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm fascinated. Yeah, I'm sorry, interrupting you, because I've been also studying women comedians over the past 8 years. And by studying, I mean observing them and meeting them. And I wrote about them. I interviewed some of them because I feel like it has been even harder for them because they have to put their whole body on stage. Even though they may have a persona, they're still risking something by being on stage. Whereas cartoonists, we can hide behind our pens in our studios. So I have great respect for women comedians and the kind of risks they've had to take over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Liza, you've been doing this for many, many years. And again, you're observing society and culture and paying attention to politics and what's happening in Hollywood, all of it. Where would you say we are today in general for women? You have 2 daughters, by the way. I wanted to mention that. And I do want to talk about them, later, just kind of what, your hopes and dreams are for them. But when you look at your daughters living in this world compared to your growing up years, is it better? Is it worse? Is it different? Is it the same as far as the struggle?
I think it's better. I don't know how to get much deeper than that. I think it's better. There's more opportunities for women. But as I said a minute ago, it's the internal struggle is still real. Trying to find out who you are, and that's always been there. It's there for men too, but I think women have more pressures too, because we're always uh, we're we're always being watched. Women are always being watched. We're people are always judging us how we're supposed to be and behave. And one great thing about growing up when I did, as I said, it was right at the end of the second wave of feminism. It was also a time where I could avoid the gender strictures, the gender binary that we've had in the 50s, because I was an artist. So I claimed that title as artist so that I could do what I wanted to do, dress how I wanted to dress. And I think that's, as I'm talking to you, it's so much better for women now than it has been. And I mean, some rights are being taken away from us now, but I think we're going to push back and be successful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and one of the biggest reasons is because of the open and candid conversations that we have around it.
Exactly. Like the Me Too
Right?
movement was good for conversations, opening up dialogue.
Yes.
The non-binary, that's the gender awareness that we have now is so great, so it's better.
Yeah. Tell me, so you're a mother and you have two daughters, and I'm curious, first of all, are either one of them going in the creative field? And what kind of conversations do you have with them, encouraging them to find their own voice sooner than later, right? Sometimes it takes us a very long time to feel
Yes.
so confident in our own voices. So what kinds of things do you say to your daughters?
I'm a believer in speaking through example. So letting them find their way, but being a steady presence for them and living my life as a creative person, individual woman in the world, as well as their mother, but not instructing them in so many ways. I don't think that's just how I am. I don't sit down and have a feminist talk with them. I just try to model feminist ideas and behavior and mention things that interest me to them. So, and I think it's worked. I think, they're both really strong women and very happy with their lives from what I can see on the outside. But when we give birth, we don't own our children. We are there
Correct.
to guide. We're there to guide them and help them
Yes.
find their way. So
Yes.
that's how I learned from my father. Actually, my mother died when I was 22, so I didn't get the joys of having an adult mother, but as an adult. But my father was very good at guiding me without interfering too much, and I think that's what I have to do. And they're both creative people. They both know how to draw really well, but they didn't choose that as a career. I think they wanted to find their own way. They're both book people. One's a librarian, and the other is a independent bookseller. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, so much of who we are is genetic, right? And
Yeah,
whatever your path is, it will show up, and not always what mom and dad did, right?
exactly.
Yeah. So I was curious if you ever get stuck creatively. Do you ever feel as though you're working on something, and if so, where do you go for inspiration? How do you get out of that place?
Oh, the answer is yes, absolutely. You get stuck. You feel like you're never going to have another idea. So what you do is you have to be patient with yourself. And I think I read somebody say this, a writer probably said, just acknowledge the fact that you're having a problem, that you're struggling in this moment. I forget who said this, but it's like, it's great because you just acknowledge it, but tell it to sit on the other side of the room, and then go do something else. Go for a walk, or go make a cup of coffee, or finish for the day and pick it up the next day, because you're going to have these times. just have to realize that you're going to have them, and it's not the end of the world. You'll find your way back eventually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you do. You
Uh,
have to keep drawing.
yeah.
So,
Well, and it's the same for everything we do, right? That's just great advice. You can't force creativity or an idea or a thought. You really need to walk away from it and come back.
It's totally true. Even if you do just one drawing in the morning, that's something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Liza, tell me what when you look at your career so far, because you're still very engaged in life, um, you have you've met a lot of high profile people, you've received numerous awards, you've accomplished great things in your field. Um, what are you most proud of? And perhaps it's something personally, it doesn't necessarily have to be from your professional career.
There's too many answers come into my head, just because I just have been I feel so fortunate, the life I've lived, and the things I've gotten to do. The first thing, I'll just tell you what the first thing came to my mind was writing Funny Ladies when I did, and meeting a young woman in the office at the New Yorker. And she said, well, we introduced each other to each other. And then she said, I saw your book and I thought, well, I can do this. So that, for me, is the greatest reward, to know that somehow I have influenced young women to find their dream or find their voice in their creative lives. So that, professionally, that was the most important thing. And also getting to the New Yorker was a huge,
Yeah.
huge accomplishment that changed everything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then, of course, having daughters. So having children is a huge thing.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Helping to birth the planet.
Right.
Okay, I do have one more question, because it
Okay.
just reminded me. I'm so you have met women, in your travels, from so many different cultures and places from around the world, women who have grown up in very different societies than we have here. And when you have conversations with them, what is it that we all have in common, whether we're born in the Middle East, whether we're born in Europe, in the United States? What's the common thread, do you think, among women?
Well, Susan, I don't want to end our interview on a down note, but I think, because I think things are getting a lot better for women, particularly in the United States, not globally. But years ago, I always drew about American culture, and I thought, well, I can't draw about people in other countries because I don't know what it's like to be a woman in Afghanistan. No clue. So how can I draw about that? But then, about 10 years ago, I started thinking, well, there's got to be something we have in common. And I don't mean just genetic, just not just our physiology, because that's not true either. But I discovered that the one thing we all have in common is that we have had rough times in our cultures. We've been belittled, we've been harassed, we've been abused, we've been underpaid. So that's the thread that I found that we have in common. And so I began to draw more about that idea, and and I would love to do, another documentary or
extended
part of this documentary about those women in other countries who have it much worse than we do. They really, many of the women get put in jail for drawing. Women have had leave their countries because they were gay, and they drew cartoons against the government. So, very brave women, very brave women. So,
Well, you know what? It's true. So while it's true, and that is, it's hard to see that and know that. Um, it's just always so inspiring when these women push back and, are resilient
it
and
is.
work for change. That's the
Yeah,
good side of it, right? How strong women really are.
I know. And I think back to the women at the New Yorker in the 1920s. Like, what made these women so strong? Not that it was a risky thing to do. It wasn't, to draw for the New Yorker, but it was stepping out of their comfort zone, stepping out of their norm. Leaving
Right.
their families in Ohio to go to New York to draw cartoons, to be a funny person in a culture that didn't think women were funny at all. So who are these women? And that's what I want to get to the bottom of. How do you bottle that thing? I don't know if you can.
Yeah. Well, you're exploring it and you're you're finding out a lot of great things and sharing it with us. So I so much appreciate your time. And I wish you the best of luck with the film. And we'll be sharing links and all kinds of information.
Your viewers can get in touch with me if they want, and I can tell them how they can help. So, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Susan.
Stay with us for our last break to hear from our watch team of on-air contributors, and I'll be back to close out the show.
We are CHOP, and we can't wait to show you around. We're the nation's first children's hospital. Now, a care network with more than 50 locations that continues to expand. 3 state-of-the-art research buildings with 1.5 million square feet of space. We have grown from 12 beds 165 years ago to nearly 600 beds and one of the best children's hospitals in the world. We have a level 1 trauma center, 11 floors of patient units, more than 20 operating rooms, first of its kind delivery unit for babies with birth defects, a separate cardiac operative and catheterization suite, and places to learn, like our internationally recognized simulation center. We have trained generations of leaders in the field of pediatrics. We are world leaders in medicine, surgery, and science. One of the top recipients in NIH funding for pediatric research. In this building, pioneers in CAR T therapy, mitochondrial disease, brain tumors, hyperinsulinism, and other rare diseases. Here, groundbreaking work in fetal surgery, genetics and genomics, and neurology. In our newest building, leaders in social determinants of health, clinical informatics and epidemiology, autism, trauma and injury prevention. Our patients come from every state and 115 countries. Meeting these challenges requires the best and the brightest. We are passionate about pediatrics. We are motivated to make a difference in the world and in our community. We are a team. We are CHOP.
That's it, everyone, for another week of Women to Watch. Thanks so much for being with me. Next week, I'm going to be sitting down with Dr. Risa Lewis. And Risa is a professor and author and a doctor in radiology and emergency medicine. Thank you, as always, to our sponsors and our watch team of corporate partners. And I hope you all have a great week.